the biggest star package that we've ever seen for an NBA player. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. I'm your boy Dom, and we're gonna get right into things here today. So, today, we are talking about, well, Karl Anthony Towns. Obviously, you can tell by the thumbnail, but yesterday he had a very interesting tweet that the NBA world erupted around, to say in the slightest. And it was 6 characters, 3 letters. He sent out WTF ... Now, this was following the firing of the Minnesota Timberwolves GM and I believe president of basketball operations, who, seems like, from what I've gathered, obviously we know this last offseason the Timberwolves have made some decent moves, to kind of try and round out their roster, maybe push for a play-in or something like that if they can be healthy. Over the last couple years, they've made moves to bring in like D'Angelo Russell, and they've drafted Anthony Edwards and stuff like that. So it seemed that the GM had been doing a pretty good job. Obviously there were Ben Simmons trade rumors swirling around, and very out of the blue today, we got confirmation that he was being fired. They hired a new guy from within, I believe, and that was it. And Kat had a very quick response to that, which, like I said, kind of erupted the NBA world. Now, why does this matter, right? Well, when your star player tweets out what the fuck when you fire somebody in your front office, that's probably not a good thing. Initially, the reactions are from me, well, that means you're not communicating with him. You didn't tell him that this was going to happen. He doesn't understand why this is happening. So even if you told him, he didn't think you were going to go through with it, or maybe he gave you input, or something like that. Or he really liked the guy and you didn't say anything, and he disagreed with you and you still did it. And now he feels that his word doesn't mean that much to you, or, that you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? I think all those reactions came out in that, simple 3-letter tweet that stands for what the fuck, the WTF, you know what I mean? And it was a pretty powerful tweet, to say the least. This is a guy that, for the Timberwolves, he's been your franchise player for, since he walked into your building. Back in, he was drafted in 2015. Was first overall pick, comes into the Timberwolves, teams up with former Rookie of the Year Andrew Wiggins, wins Rookie of the Year himself, and just does great things for your franchise ever since. His first 3 years in the league, he played every single game, and he was an all-star by his 3rd year, right? He's still only 25 years old. He's a 2-time all-star. His career average is almost 25, 10, and 5. His career average is about 23, 11, and 3. This last season, he averaged almost 25, 10, and 5, which is very good. He's pretty much consensusly a top 5 center, I'd say pretty much unanimously. Now there is a couple people, for sure. There's some varying opinions or some hot takes where he's not. But for the most part, he's consensusly a top 5 center. Top 5 at a position in the NBA is very good. This is a guy that also I feel like would be probably ranked higher. And, a consensus top 3 as he was for a while there. If his team had success, which his team doesn't have success. So you have a guy that comes in, he's your franchise player for, at this point, 6 seasons. Or 6 years, right? And that is the last guy you want to be tweeting what the fuck when you make a front office move. Because we know what it was about. It wasn't about some random rainstorm that the weatherman didn't predict that day, right? It was about the front office move. And if I was the Minnesota Timberwolves owners, if I was higher up in this organization, if I was the coach, if I was the fans, I would be shitting bricks right now. Because this scares me. I mean, you look at the Ben Simmons situation. It's a guy that is just getting onto his extension. His rookie extension. He's just getting onto that, and he's forcing his way out. And so if you're telling me that you think that a Karl Anthony Towns, who at this point doesn't have as long as Simmons has on his contract, but he's locked up to the 23-24 season. He is going into the third out of the fifth year of his deal, so he has 3 seasons left on his deal. That's a little bit longer than what we had thought was possible to be traded out of, but you know, Ben Simmons is potentially just kind of making this irrelevant. And Ben Simmons isn't quite the caliber player Karl Anthony Towns is either. Although they were both drafted number 1 overall. But yeah, I mean, I would be scared. If we're looking at, so if he ends up requesting a trade, which I think, during the season, if things don't start off hot, I think, you probably have 1 more season with Karl Anthony Towns. And if you do not make the playoffs, and I mean make the play-in game, probably win the play-in games to be the 8th or 7th seed, then I think he is going to request out if you are not in the playoffs in a 7-game series this next season. Because he's going to be like, dude, I've been here for 7 years now. This last offseason, you were firing the GM, after, I believe that he made good moves. And even then, the good moves he made still weren't good enough to get us, as far as I wanted. And he's going to want out. I think this is the beginning of the end of Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota. Now, I could very well be wrong. And he might just be frustrated for 1 day and then, whatever, it's a front office guy. You know what I mean? But I just don't see that as his type of personality. It's a guy that was all in for the Timberwolves for a long time, and then obviously a lot really struck him personally with his family and everything with COVID and stuff, and he lost a lot of people close to him, right? Which has affected his play the last couple years, but still averaged, like I said, 25, 10, and 5 this last season. And seemed like he wanted to do everything he could to just try and make it work in Minnesota, even though they've been like a 20-win team, except for when Jimmy Butler was there, right? He just seemed committed to the city, almost in a Dame sense of way, where you didn't get trade rumors for Karl Anthony Towns, but they're going to start ramping up now. The whole season, we're going to be hearing rumors for Karl Anthony Towns, and I think that that'll kind of give us an idea of who could trade for him. A package would be huge for Karl Anthony Towns, because his value is high, even if he hasn't played a ton the last few seasons. And so just looking at, quickly at some teams that could trade for him, the New York Knicks, right? This is a team that wants a star, and you would be able to pair Karl Anthony Towns next to Julius Randle, most likely moving Evan Fournier, maybe Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel. You've got, multiple contracts on this team that can add up to that max contract. Throw in an RJ Barrett, maybe. I don't know. Just kind of spieling, right? Potentially reuniting with Derrick Rose, who we know when he was in Minnesota, he kind of revitalized his career, and I feel like built the connection with that team, and probably specifically with Karl Anthony Towns, with Karl Anthony Towns being the best player on the Timberwolves. So you could see that happen. I think the Knicks would become a possibility to finally get themselves a star player, and a superstar player at that, which Karl Anthony Towns is. And I think he would thrive under the lights of New York, right? Another spot to look at would potentially be, maybe the Toronto Raptors. We know the Toronto Raptors are willing to trade for that stuff. They don't really have great centers. And you could give up a guy like OG Anunoby, for Karl Anthony Towns and make something happen. along with picks and stuff like that, good young players, they would be able to throw in a package to try and push themselves back into contention and get another superstar. The Orlando Magic, I think might have the assets young player wise, and they've got a few extra picks. I just don't see it quite happening for them. Even a team like the Mavericks, they become a really good possibility because Porzingis hasn't shown to be that second star next to Luka, and I think Karl Anthony Towns would do what Porzingis does 1,000 times better for that team. In that pick and pop with Luka Doncic, he would probably average almost 30 points per game next to Luka, and they would more than likely one of them would win an MVP playing together. Just because that'd be such a dynamic duo. But they've got the money make it work. They could throw some picks in. They've got young assets on the team such as Tyler Terry and Josh Green, Jalen Brunson. Even a Moses Brown, who's a somewhat young, decent center, and if the if the Minnesota Timberwolves felt like they would need a centers back, they've got a ton of them. Run Dwight Powell for a year, he's a veteran center, and then obviously Kristaps Porzingis would probably be in the move, or would have to be in the move. Sorry. So I think that they become a possibility to try and target him. If we keep looking down the board in the Western Conference, maybe the Pelicans. Maybe the Pelicans say, hey, this is a guy that can fit next to Zion. If it doesn't work out this year and, Zion potentially gets in the same situation as Karl Anthony Towns, well, they go out and they get Karl Anthony Towns to pair them together. Maybe that we see a Brandon Ingram move happen. As on paper, they should fit well together, but it just hasn't quite worked. And this would be a bit interesting defensively, though, down low, as Zion has not shown the defensive potential that he showed and really thrived on at Duke in the NBA. And a lot of the perimeter players aren't fantastic defensively, and like Devontae Graham and stuff like that. But the Pelicans would have would be able to make it work. You send Brandon Ingram. Maybe the Timberwolves want to sign and trade with Valanciunas so that they can get a center in return. And then below that, you're just going to have expiring money in Valanciunas, in Satoransky, and stuff like that. You're not paying anybody too crazy much, right? Josh Hart's making 12, Devontae Graham's making 11, Zion's still on a rookie deal. So they would be able to make the money work. And that would be an interesting potential pairing that if Zion becomes disgruntled and Karl Anthony Towns wants out. Maybe that could we could see that happen. I don't think the Sacramento Kings would be players, although I think they could give up the assets. I just don't see anybody really wanting to go after, or the Timberwolves specifically, to go after a Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and maybe even a Davion Mitchell package for Karl Anthony Towns. I don't even know how you would make. You'd probably have to trade Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes together. It would be a lot of players moving, which I just don't think that the Timberwolves want to take in a bunch of your projects. I think they want your picks, they want maybe a project or two, and they want a guy that can play. The Thunder become a huge possibility with the amount of picks that they have. Try and maybe pair Cat with Shea and get themselves a superstar and speed up their rebuild, as obviously we know that the center position is their hole on their team as well. It would fit pretty well there. And I think the Rockets could also be potential. They've got picks, they've got a contract in John Wall to match it. You could even send Eric Gordon. And they've got some young players on here as well to make it work. Front court of Christian Wood and Karl Anthony Towns would be super interesting to see. I don't know if Christian Wood would need to be in the move or not. But definitely something that we could keep an eye on as well. So there's definitely a plethora of teams that, would have the possibility to go out and get Karl Anthony Towns. And if he does become disgruntled after his season, I think there's a high possibility that he'd be moved, as he would be down to 2 years on his contract, which isn't far away from even typically now when we see stars get moved. As teams typically want a little bit more than a year, so typically it's at the trade deadline with a year and a half left, and we've seen a lot of stars get moved at that point. And this wouldn't be too far from that, especially If Ben Simmons ends up getting moved, it wouldn't even really matter at that point how many years Karl Anthony Towns has left on his contract, because if he's willing to go the Simmons route and set it out and say, I'm just disappointed with the franchise and I refuse to play for you, he'll get traded. It could decrease his trade value or whatever, but definitely a bad sign for the Timberwolves organization, a bad sign for Timberwolves fans, and a very interesting sign for the NBA, because I think that there is definitely, some of those teams I listed around the league are licking their chops and waiting for Karl Anthony Towns to hit the trade block, because some of the trades that will be offered to the Minnesota Timberwolves for him will probably, they're probably going to exceed a James Harden package, or an Anthony Davis package, because Karl Anthony Towns is younger, and I think although he, he's missed more games in the last couple of years, it's more been due to personal issues than injury. So whereas AD kind of had that injury history that comes with him, so I would see, he could potentially reel in at 26, 27, heading into his prime, the biggest star package that we've ever seen for an NBA player, if he does get traded from the Minnesota Timberwolves, which is kind of insane to think about, and that could be on the horizon. Now, if Zion somehow finds his way out of New Orleans, that could rival that as well, depending if he's on a new contract or not. But obviously, that's another conversation for another day. So, yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for this episode. Appreciate everybody's support recently. Again, having a ton of fun making these videos, so when you guys stop by, I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been your boy Dom from NBA Now, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace out.